Welcome to St. Lucie Public Schools Transportation Department, driving students to success. This training session's objective is to educate all of our staff members within the Communications Center on the TV displays. Each day, you will now be required to document how many calls you've handled and submit that information at the end of the week. In order to gather this information, you will need to know how to read the display screens to do so. Let's take a look at what the TV displays show. In pink, across the top, displays the call queue information. This is the Communications Center as a whole. Below that, in blue, is the details of each individual's extension. Let's take a look at each section now. Looking at section 1 for the call queue, the first box you'll see is the pending calls. This is the number of calls that have not yet been answered and are waiting to get through to a live person. Right next to that is the oldest pending call time. And this shows how long the oldest call that came through has been waiting to get through to a live person. Anytime there are numbers or a time in these two boxes, it indicates we have calls in queue and need to move our current calls along as quickly but as efficiently as possible. In the third box, you'll see the presented calls. This is the number of calls that have come into the main group. Again, remember, this number does not indicate calls that have been answered. The following is the handled calls. This is the number that has calculated the answered calls. Beyond that is the abandoned calls. Calls that have been disconnected before reaching a live person. This number is what will affect our answered percentage. And beyond that is our overflowed calls. This is the number of calls that rang into the main group but went unanswered after 60 seconds. Now they will overflow into the next group, which is the support group. The next box we see is the average speed of answer time. This shows the average time it took to answer the number of handled calls. The average speed of handle shows the average time it took to handle the call from answer to end. And finally, the average speed of abandon shows the average time it took for a caller to hang up before they were connected to a live person. These calls went abandoned and again affects the answered percentage rate. Now let's take a look at section 2, which is the individual extension details. We're going to use Max as an example. On the top left of the box, you'll see your name with your extension right next to it. Below that is the idle 4. This time shows how long it's been since you've ended your last call. In this scenario, Max has ended his last call 3 hours, 58 minutes, and 7 seconds ago. Below that, across the bottom of the box, is group calls. This shows how many calls you have answered and spoke to you. Again, these are the calls that are calculated through the main number of the communication center. Right next to that is the missed calls. This shows how many calls rang to your extension that went unanswered. This is only tracked during back to school as we set up the calls differently during that time. Beyond that is the outbound calls. This will show how many outbound calls you have made and spoke to somebody. Now looking at the right side of the box, we do not monitor the information circled here as the phone system averages from midnight to current time. Therefore, it's not an accurate representation of time. Taking a look at the extension details for each agent, you will notice the boxes are different colors. A white box indicates that that agent is available for a call. A green box indicates an outgoing call, and a blue box indicates an incoming call. In case you missed it, let's recap. The TVs in the Communications Center will display the call queue and the extension details. Section 1 is the queue information. Section 2 is the individual extension details. Each day, you are required to document how many calls you've handled through the main group and then turn them in on Fridays. All staff will be held accountable to meet all the expectations set forth by the Transportation Management Team. If you have any questions about this training or any other training, please speak with your immediate manager. Thank you.